Yeah.
An awesome God he
Got 'em.
reigns from heaven above with wisdom, power, and love. Our God is an awesome God.
Hey friends, what's going on? Welcome to another episode of Chaotic Serenity. Thank you for being here. Appreciate your time. So, as you have noticed in previous episodes of Chaotic Serenity, I have been reading a variety of books from a guy named Timothy Keller. I made some comments and some notes along the way as I've been reading, and I just wanted to talk about another subject that I found pretty interesting. And this subject isn't unique to a Timothy Keller book. It just happens to be mentioned there. It's listed in many other books by many other authors. It has to do somewhat with apologetics and the concept of how we know what we know, right? So, for example, right, you look up at the sky and it's blue. We just know it's blue, right? How do we know that it's blue, right? And I know that may sound like a silly question, right? Well, obviously, everybody knows what blue looks like, and we can see blue if we're not blind, right? So we know the sky is blue, right? But how do we know for sure? How do we know that our eyes are not deceiving us? You see my point? How do we know what we know? Okay, one of my favorite theologians and authors that talks about this topic and philosophy in general is R.C. Sproul. Check him out. Great guy. God rest his soul. We lost him pretty recently, and he is missed, definitely. So, the actual topic here has to do with faith, right? When we talk about faith, when anybody talks about faith, I believe that the first thing that comes to mind is faith in God or some sort of God or some sort of deity, right? Usually the term faith is synonymous with the subject or object, I should say, of the faith. And that's usually God, right? When we talk about, well, do you have faith? Do you believe? It's normally in reference to, do you believe or have faith in a God, or do you believe that there is a God, right? I know sometimes we talk about, hey, I've got faith that my son is going to pull through in the final inning of that baseball game, right? Yeah, we talk about that kind of faith too. But oftentimes when we talk about faith, as far as just believing things and possibly believing things that we maybe haven't seen or seen in full, right? Taking someone at their word, that kind of faith. Oftentimes we think of religion or God, right? And so in this section of the book that I was reading, when I made a note about this, what the author is talking about is philosophy and how oftentimes people will say, well, there's not enough reason, there's not enough evidence, there's not enough factual information out there for me to believe that God exists, or for me to believe that the Bible is true, or for me to believe any number of things as it relates to being a Christian, right? And one of the assertions that Mr. Keller makes is that ordinary rationality requires faith. So not even talking about God, right? Just talking about stuff that we do every day, like driving a car, okay? When you get in your car, you go pull out of your neighborhood, wherever, you come up to a stoplight before long, right? Say the stoplight is red. Well, your brain says, hey, look, I see red. That means you need to stop, right? So you say, okay, stop, brake pedal, and all that happens in a split second, right? You sit there and wait. You're listening to your music, jamming out, arguing with your kid, your spouse, your boyfriend, girlfriend, whatever it is you do in the car. Maybe praying at the stoplight for the person who's been tailgating you and is now parked behind you, shaking their fist, right? Whatever, you're parked at the stoplight, and the light changes, okay? Your eyes notice the light change to what you perceive as the color green. Okay, when that happens, your eyes send a signal to your brain that says, hey, look, I see green. That means go. Foot, gas pedal, and then you go. You're trusting, you're having faith that the information that your eyes are giving you is true and accurate and legitimate, right? So that's kind of what I'm getting at. If you're driving down the street, you come up to some railroad tracks. Let's just say that the little arms are not down. The arms are up. However, you can hear a train coming. You hear the whistle, woo, woo, toot, 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 and you can hear it. Right? Now, you could either keep driving through and hope that there's not a train right about to come around the corner and smash you, or you can stop and wait to see what transpires with that sound. Because you hear a train, you're trusting your ears, and you would rather be safe than sorry. So you're going to stop and just check it out and see what happens. Again, my point is that when our senses provide information to our brain, we automatically trust them, right? Rarely do we ever question our senses, okay? And we're a lot like a computer in a sense, right? No pun intended. Senses. Computers can take input. They can take in information, right? This microphone is an input device. It allows the computer to take in information via my voice. This mouse is an input device. It allows me to take in information via my clicks. Okay, you with me? In a very similar way, our body has got these input devices. We've got eyes. They allow us to take in input based on what we see. We have ears, same thing, what we hear. We can smell, we can taste, we can touch, feel things, right? We also have a mind that processes all of the input, just like a processor in a computer, right? So our mind processes our thoughts, allows us to think, processes the information, and we also have memories, right? Our cognitive function. We have memories, and our memories could be faulty, but oftentimes we act based on memories very quick without even thinking about it, okay? So when I talk about how ordinary faith requires, I had that backwards. Ordinary rationality requires faith. Okay, so it's not just, hey, I need to muster up this faith to be able to believe in God. You have to muster up faith to believe in anything, to trust your senses, to believe your eyes, to believe your ears. It just happens so naturally that we don't even realize that it's happening, much less contemplate the philosophical intricacies behind it, right? So, in this part of the book, Timothy Keller is talking about basically reasons for faith, reasons for believing in God. We call it apologetics, right? Not making an apology, but that comes from a word that has to do with providing a reason to believe, providing evidence, providing proof, that type of a thing, right? So Timothy Keller is not the founder of the topic that we are kind of discussing, right? He didn't come up with this argument on his own, but he does illustrate some great philosophers that did do a lot of pondering. One of my favorite, more recent philosopher/theologians is R.C. Sproul. God rest his soul. He is at home with the Father now. He's not with us. But I've learned a lot from him. Very, very, very well-spoken and, in my mind, very intelligent guy. But anyways, back to Timothy Keller. So Timothy Keller quotes some philosophers in his book, and it goes like this. He says, all reasoning is based on prior faith commitments to which one did not reason. Okay? You get that? So he's saying all reasoning, anything that you reason, anything that you contemplate, anything that you think about, anything that goes on in your mind, in your computer processor, right? It is based on input that comes in from outside. Okay? And those input devices that you're using, you have not tested. You don't have a computer set up in a laboratory somewhere that allows you to test the accuracy of your senses, per se. Okay? I'll talk more about that in a minute. And then the quote goes on to say, for example, reason depends on faith. Okay? And that's any kind of reasoning. What they're getting at there is, you have to have faith that your eyes are working properly in order to act on what you see. You have to have faith that your ears are not playing tricks on you in order to act on what you hear, right? If you have a memory of something, you have to believe that that memory is accurate in order to act on it, right? If you're going over to a friend's house and you remember where they live, you've only been there a couple of times, but you know where they live, right? You're relying on your memory to give you accurate directions to get there, right? You probably wouldn't be very likely to knock on a door if you didn't even know you were in the right neighborhood, much less at the right house, right? So reason depends on the faith that our cognitive senses, our eyes, our ears, and our minds, and our memories are not tricking us. Yet there is no circular way to establish that. We cannot test their reliability without using and therefore assuming their reliability. And I know you might be thinking, okay, that's kind of silly, right? Why are we arguing about whether or not I can trust what I'm seeing with my eyes, right? I've got on my glasses. I can look up and see the sky is blue. We all know it's blue. I can ask my neighbor, hey, what color is the sky? And they'll say, oh, the sky is blue, right? But when we talk about philosophy, philosophy is very similar to math in some ways, in that there is a baseline use of logic, right? There's a lot of if statements, then statements, right? Because of this, we can know that. Proofs can be performed in science and with philosophy. You know, Descartes, one of the old school philosophers, among other things, he was actually saying, you know, I'm going to go as far back as we can go, and I'm going to start with myself. I'm going to think about and ponder and try to prove that I actually exist. How can I know that I actually exist? And again, that sounds silly, right? I'm right here. I can see myself. I can feel myself. I can smell myself, right? So how can I be sure that I exist? And Descartes said, well, what if I'm a figment of my own imagination? What if all of my sensory perception is nothing? What if I am some unconscious being dreaming that life is real and I'm locked up in some sort of a tank in the Matrix movie, right? You get what I'm saying? How can we be sure that we even exist as we do? And so he went on to reason that, well, I'm able to think right now, okay? I'm not just floating around in a dream. I can think. I can control my thoughts. Have you ever been in a dream where the dream is just kind of happening and you're there, and sometimes you know that something bad or dangerous is about to happen, yet you feel like you don't have the control to do anything about it? You know, like in your dream, you're walking towards a cliff, and you know that you don't want to go over that cliff, but for some reason in the dream, you can't make yourself turn around. You just keep walking, right? So what he would think about is, okay, well, I know I'm able to think because I'm thinking right now. And not only am I thinking, but I'm doubting the things that I'm thinking, right? So if there is a doubter, if there is someone who can doubt, then that must mean that I exist because I'm doubting. I'm doubting the doubts that I doubt, right? And that's as simple as that seems on the surface. When you really think about it, it's like mind-boggling. But ultimately, Descartes said, I think, therefore I am. And I think it was Descartes. Correct me if I'm wrong, but I'm pretty sure that it was Descartes that went through that whole process of philosophical inquisition about the self, right? Anyways, where I'm going here is that, yeah, it may seem silly or it may seem ridiculous that I'm questioning if what I can hear is legitimate or if what I can see is legitimate, right? But with philosophy, oftentimes we start at the very beginning and we say, well, how can we know that this is correct? Okay, how can we know that that's correct, right? And considering that everything in the whole world comes to us through our five senses, it would probably behoove us to find some way to prove that our five senses are reliable, right? Because we put so much faith in them. However, we can't test their reliability without using them. How can you test your sight without you or someone else using their sight? Or how can we test our hearing without us or someone else using hearing? How can we test anything without the other senses being involved in administering that test, right? It can't be done. It's a circular argument. So Keller basically goes on to say that, look, there are people that say, hey, there's not enough information for me to, not enough proof for me to believe that there is a God, or for me to believe in the argument that the Bible is reliable, right? But Keller and the people that came before him are saying, well, yeah, there actually is plenty of information. And you know what? Not only is there plenty of information, but you're taking a bigger leap of faith in any rational decision you make, right, than that. Because you're relying on something that's not testable. You're relying on all of your own senses. How do you know that you're not being fooled? So anyways, that's all I got for y'all. I just wanted to give you something to ponder, something that would make your head hurt if you thought about it too much, right? That's kind of fun. So Till we meet again, thanks for being here. Thanks for your time. Blessings to you. And hey, may the Lord be with you. Till next time, deuces.